Hi, are you ready to read Chapter 9 of My Father's Dragon by Ruth Stiles Gannett and pictures by Ruth Crispin Gannett? Me too. But first, let's remember what happened in Chapter 8, where Elmer met a gorilla and several monkeys. The gorilla was about to start twisting Elmer's arms when he got so itchy that he had to stop. It turned out that the gorilla was covered in fleas, and the monkeys were helping him pick them off. But they couldn't find the fleas because they're so tiny. So do you remember what Elmer gave them? He gave them his magnifying glasses, which he had in his pack. So clever. Now Chapter 9 is called My Father Makes a Bridge. Let's find out what happens. My father walked back and forth along the bank, trying to think of some way to cross the river. He found a high flagpole with a rope going over to the other side. The rope went through a loop at the top of the pole, and then down the pole and around a large crank. And a sign on the crank said, "To summon dragon, yank the crank. Report disorderly conduct to gorilla." Oh, gorilla must be in charge of the crank. From what the cat had told my father, he knew that the other end of the rope was tied around the dragon's neck. And he felt sorrier than ever for the poor dragon, because if he were on this side, the gorilla would twist his wings until it hurt so much that he'd have to fly to the other side. And if he were on the other side, the gorilla would crank on the rope until the dragon would either choke or fly back to this side to get his wings twisted. What a life for a baby dragon! My father knew that if he called to the dragon to come across the river, the gorilla would surely hear him, so he thought about climbing the pole and going across the rope. The pole was very high, though, and even if he could get to the top without being seen, he'd have to go all the way across, hand over hand, almost like monkey bars. The river was very muddy, and all sorts of unfriendly things might live in it, but my father could think of no other way to get across. He was about to start up the pole when, despite all the noise the monkeys were making, he heard a loud splash behind him. He looked all around, but it was dusk now, so he couldn't see anything in the water. Dusk is when the sun starts to go down and it gets just dark enough that it's hard to see. "It's me, Crocodile," said a voice to the left. "The water's lovely, and I have such a craving for something sweet. Won't you come for a swim?" A pale moon came out from behind the clouds, and my father could see where the voice was coming from. The crocodile's head was just peeping out of the water. "Oh, no thank you," said Elmer. "I never swim after sundown, but I do have something sweet to offer you. Perhaps you'd like a lollipop. And perhaps you have friends who would like lollipops too?" "Lollipops?" said the crocodile. "Why, that is a treat. How about it, boys?" A whole chorus of voices shouted, "Hurrah, lollipops!" And my father counted as many as 17 crocodiles, all with their heads just peeping out of the water. "That's fine," said my father as he got out the 24 pink lollipops and the rubber bands. 24, you know how many that is? 24. He's got enough lollipops for all 17 crocodiles. "I'll stick one here in the bank. Lollipops last longer if you keep them out of the water, you know." "Now, one of you can have this one." The crocodile who had first spoken swam up and tasted it. "Oh, delicious, mighty delicious," he said. "Now, if you don't mind," said my father, "I'll just walk along your back and fasten another lollipop to the tip of your tail with a rubber band. You don't mind that, do you?" Oh, this is interesting. Here's a picture. So, here's the first crocodile. Oops. And you can see right there in his mouth is the first lollipop. Elmer stuck it in the sand on the edge of the river so the crocodile could swim up and lick it without it getting wet and melting. And now he's using the rubber band to tie another lollipop to the tip of the crocodile's tail. And look at all those hungry crocodiles in the water. "Oh, I don't mind you walking on my back in the least," said the crocodile. "Can you just lift your tail out of the water a bit?" asked my father. "Of course, yes," said the crocodile, and he lifted up his tail, and then my father ran along his back and fastened another lollipop with a rubber band. "Who's next?" said my father, and a second crocodile swam up and began sucking on that lollipop. "Now, you gentlemen can save a lot of time if you just line up across the river," said my father, "and I'll be along to give each of you a lollipop." So the crocodiles lined up right across the river, with their tails in the air, waiting for my father to fasten on the rest of the lollipops. The tail of the 17th crocodile just reached the other bank. So Elmer got the crocodiles to make him a bridge out of their bodies. That is such a smart idea. And that is the end of chapter 9. My father makes a bridge.